meeting of the Independent School District 535 School Board is called to order at 5:30 p.m. on Tuesday, April 23rd, 2024, in room 137 of the Edison building. Present at this meeting are school board members, Superintendent Kent Pickell, a non-voting ex officio member, and Assistant School Board Clerk, Ms. Lori Sam. Ms. Sam, would you please call the roll?
Director Barlow.
Here.
Director Cook.
Here.
Director Garcia.
Here.
Clerk McLaughlin.
Here.
Treasurer Marvin.
Here.
Chair Nathan.
Here.
Vice Chair Workman.
Here. The board acknowledges this site and all RPS sites are situated on the ancestral land of the Dakota people, and we honor the Dakota nations and the sacred land of all indigenous peoples. At this time, we offer the opportunity to say the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 2.1 is approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
Move approval. Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Oh, sorry. Roll call.
Oh, roll call.
Director Barlow.
Aye.
Director Cook.
Approve the agenda.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Clerk McLaughlin.
Aye.
Treasurer Marvin.
Aye.
Chair Nathan.
Aye.
Vice Chair Workman.
Aye. Item 3, comments to the board. It is important for the school board to hear from our stakeholders regarding issues that impact our students, staff, families, and schools. We welcome communication via email, phone call, at our community engagement listening sessions, and here during comments to the board. Persons who want to make comments to the board must fill out the online request to provide comments to the board form by 5 p.m. on the Monday before the school board meeting to sign up for a time slot. The form is available on the RPS website, rochesterschools.org, under School Board Communications, and on the Simbly main page at rochesterschools.org/Simbly. The purpose of comments to the board is to give community members an opportunity to provide input directly to the school board about issues that fall within our authority. The board and superintendent do not respond directly to the speaker's comments during the meeting, but may follow up with the speaker if requested and appropriate. A reminder that Policy 206 and Procedure 206A set the time, place, and manner, procedures, and restrictions on comments to the board. These ensure privacy protections for students and staff and prohibit comments that are threatening, profane, lewd, vulgar, obscene, harassing, abusive, or constitute a personal attack on others. Speakers, when your name is called, please come to the table. Choose a microphone to speak into and be seated. You will have 3 minutes to speak, and the timer will be displayed right in front of me. Please begin your remarks by stating your name. If you have written materials for the board, please provide them to the Assistant School Board Clerk prior to your remarks, and she will distribute them to board members. Our first speaker is Vince Wagner. Our next speaker is Paula Craigo. Our next agenda item is 4.1, Information and Outreach, Administrative Professionals Day. Administrative Professionals Day is tomorrow, April 24th. Our receptionists, secretaries, administrative coordinators, and office managers do an exceptional job and work to keep our schools and offices organized and running efficiently. They are the first stop to welcoming families and students to our buildings and offices, and often the best resources for connecting the right people to address an issue. We appreciate these dedicated RPS professionals. Item 4.2 is our board member committee updates. Does any board member have updates on their committee since the last meeting or any information to share? Director Marvin.
Thank you. Student School Board continues to meet. We have one representative here. I know. Johanna, do you want to come up here? And Najmo, are you here? Yeah, Najmo. She is? Yeah. Oh, good. Right up here. These are two students from our Area Learning Center, and they have agreed to take 2 minutes each to fill you in. And introduce yourselves before you speak. Thank you.
Is it on? Okay. Hi, I'm Johanna Geekus. I'm a senior. Can I begin?
You're doing great.
Okay. I started my high school education at Century High School, and due to lack of support, I dropped out and did not attend high school for the last 3 quarters of my sophomore year. In the beginning of my junior year, I began Success Lab at ALC, and by the end of my junior year, I had completely caught up on the credits I missed from the previous year and met the required credits for that year. In the summer before my senior year, I got sober I went into recovery for drug and alcoholism, and the treatment I was doing was working great, but I needed extra support, and I joined Apex Recovery School at Rochester ALC. Apex is a recovery school for students who choose to be there and are committed to sobriety and recovery. Apex gave me a community of peers who were going through the same struggles I was, and held me accountable in my sobriety and recovery. And the teachers at Apex also supported each student's different ways of learning. In a few months, I will be the third of my mom's 3 children to graduate from Rochester ALC. Today, I'm finished with my credits early. I'm currently employed through RPS, and I'm moving into my first apartment in the beginning of June, and I have plans of college. And I'm confident in my abilities today, and I would not be here without Rochester ALC.
Hi, is this on?
Just slide it in. Yeah, come bring it. There you go.
Okay. Hi, I'm Najma Khalif. I am currently a sophomore at Rochester ALC. The story to why I came to ALC was more like an attendance and grade issue. I went to Century previously, and I didn't feel like I fit in with anybody. I didn't feel like I could relate to any of the staff there, and I didn't feel like I had any support either. I ended up switching to Rochester ALC with, I would say, 0.25 of a credit. And that is when I joined the ALC Day School program. That helped me catch up with all of my freshman year credits. And then I was led to be able to join the ALC Success Lab, which helped me be able to maintain my job and live my day-to-day life as a teenager while still being able to catch up with the rest of my credits. Today, I am currently in the night school program, and I am supposed to graduate, I would say, a little bit before my class of 2026 would, and that is not something I thought I was going to be able to do my freshman year. I didn't even think graduation was something I was going to do my freshman year, to be honest, and I'm confident enough to say today that I stand here and I will be able to walk with my class, if not a little bit ahead. Without the ALC, I feel like I would still be skipping class. Honestly, I think I would still be hanging out with my sister in a car and not really interacting with anybody. At ALC, I feel like I've been able to find a decent community. I feel like I've found some peers I can relate to. I feel like I have found a lot of staff members I have felt comfortable speaking with, and that is kind of who I am today.
You both are an inspiration to all of us. Thank you so much for coming. And we'd love you to stay for the rest of the meeting, but you don't have to. So, thank you.
Board members, any other committees to report on?
I think we could just be done with it.
Yeah, or we can be done with the meeting, because that was the best part. Director McLaughlin.
I have a brief legislative update. I realized as I'm doing this and getting ready for tonight's meeting that I'll do a very high level because there's so much action going on at the Capitol that things are in process, and I don't think it makes sense to give us a lot of an update when things are in conference committees and that kind of thing. So what I learned at the MSBA Friday chat room on the 12th is that the education policy bill had passed through the House, and both the House and the Senate were developing their finance omnibus bills at that point. And then in the update on the 19th, we learned a little bit more information that actually the 19th was the day for the finance bills, and the education policy bill is now in conference committee. They also released the supplemental budgets in both the House and the Senate and are working to get those on track with each other to make some consensus in those two bodies. And it looks like again, the next steps are the conference committees of most of the major bills, and they will report back once the conference committees have met and worked to make all the language identical in the House and Senate bills.
We should know within the next 15 days, because that's when the session is over, so that'll be good news.
I have one other update.
Sure.
Director Cook and I both attended the APAC meeting on the 11th of April. Director Cook, did you want to give an update, or do you want me to, or?
Why don't you go ahead? Thank you, Director McLaughlin.
Okay. We both had a great introduction to the group, and then also the topic that I was glad that we actually had a chance to talk about there is the recommendation from APAC to develop a program to have an elder in our district. And we asked some questions about that, and what I learned about it is that the APAC group actually, it's very new in their thought process as well. So it was really great to engage with them as they're starting in this discussion, as I expect we will do here at the board level as well. What I learned about that process is one of the ideas behind having an elder in the district is to connect to our land, and that it kind of reflects on our land acknowledgement at the beginning of our meetings. They're hoping that the elder that we can identify to work with RPS will be of a Dakota tribe, because that is the land that we're sitting on here today. They talked about how having an elder involved in our district would help their group grow stronger, and it would give them a connection to the whole district, a connection to tribal education. And one of the things that I found really interesting is that one of the other ideas behind having that program is to make connections that we don't have here, because we are an urban district without tribe connected to our Rochester location, but have a lot of students from a lot of different tribes. So that's one of the things that's missing here, is that we don't have a very solid connection necessarily to the land and to the Dakota people. The other thing that I didn't realize is that the Mayo Clinic is actually having some discussions at some level about having an elder council or an elder on, in some involvement in their organization as well. So I thought that might be a way that we could partner with Mayo Clinic on this endeavor as well.
So just a follow-up from our school board listening session. We want to thank Pomojo Women for co-sponsoring our community listening session last Friday. We had 6 school board members present to visit with members of that community. There were some wonderful conversations, good questions were asked, and we have some issues to follow up on. And we also like to thank our staff, Jennifer Spindler-Craigie and Lita Casper, and the staff at Franklin, who welcomed us and facilitated our conversations. It was, I think, everybody who was there really enjoyed meeting with that community and hearing what some of their unique challenges and needs were. Also want to remind people that the 2024 School Board Academy will be held on April 25th and April 30th from 6:30 to 8:30 p.m. here in the boardroom. The content will be identical on both days. It's a great opportunity to learn about the responsibilities, requirements, resources, policies, and practices related to being a member of the Rochester School Board. And you can sign up on the district website on our school board elections page, or through the direct link that's available on our agenda. Our next items are consent agenda 5.1 through 5.18. Would any board member like any item removed from the consent agenda for separate consideration?
Move approval.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Roll call.
Director Barlow.
Aye.
Director Cook.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Clerk McLaughlin.
Aye.
Treasurer Marvin.
Aye.
Chair Nathan.
Aye.
Vice Chair Workman.
Aye.
The consent agenda has been approved. Item 6.1 is a focus topic, a post-secondary education update, another information item related to one of our strategic plan district-wide initiatives for strategic change, or DISC. Superintendent Pickup.
Thank you, Chair Nathan. And as I have some of my colleagues come up by mutual agreement, I'm going to try and set a somewhat broader context for the update that I'm excited for board members to receive on what we call our post-secondary pathways work. And we think that it's important to share this broader perspective for a couple of reasons. One, to understand the historic nature of the work that we are about to talk about here, and two, to put that work in a broader context. So on the first point, it is often underappreciated when we talk about preparing kids for success after high school that the American K-12 educational system and the American higher education system were designed to be entirely separate. They were designed to be higher education was designed to be an elite proposition that was never intended to engage the vast majority of people. And for the first couple centuries of the American economy, that worked pretty well. Even high school completion was something that only the elite were expected to complete. In 1900, high school graduation rates in the United States were 7%. By the 1980s, that had risen to 70% as it became clear that a high school diploma was what it took to succeed in the industrial economy of the 20th century. Well, we know in the 21st century that completion of some form of post-secondary education is the key to opportunity. And that doesn't just mean four-year colleges. It means technical school. It means community college. It means technical programs. It means going straight into a high-skill workplace with the knowledge and skills you need to succeed there. And yet, the legacy of those two separate systems continues to loom large. The K-12 standards that define what we teach are better aligned than they were 20 years ago with what you need to get into and to succeed in college, but they are still fundamentally separate. The same is true of the funding systems, the application systems, and even the culture. As anybody who's been to a community technical college or four-year university knows, the culture of college is foundationally different than the culture of high school or middle school. And so we are trying in this work that we're going to get an update on, first of all, to bridge that divide between two systems that really were not designed to align and talk to each other. And the work that Will and Heather and Alex are going to give you and the community an update on really focuses on how we help students develop a vision of who they want to be and where they want to go after high school, and take the steps while they're in Rochester Public Schools to have the knowledge, skills, and habits to realize those goals when they graduate. This work is a lot about empowering students and empowering families to make decisions and take the actions they need to essentially put themselves on the path that they want in life. But we know that if we only did that, absent a broader set of changes that we're also working on in Rochester Public Schools, it would be positive but not sufficient. And so if you can bring up that first slide that's there, I want to share a framework that comes, and I apologize because I had the citation on this and it just got cut off. This is from Dr. David Conley, who spent most of his career at the University of Oregon, and whose research focused on the gap that I just described. And his big insight was that the skills for college admission are not necessarily the skills for college success. It is one of the most heartbreaking things to see a student who worked hard and thought they did everything right in middle school and high school get into post-secondary education and then find they do not have the knowledge, skills, habits, or support that they need to earn that college degree. That's a tragedy for many reasons, and increasingly today for financial ones, because the debt that students are left with without a college credential is not something that provides any bonus in the workforce. There used to be, 30 years ago, a wage benefit for what the economists called some college. You didn't earn a degree, but you attended some college, and we would look at the wages those people made in whatever field they were in, they did somewhat better. We now find that some college is the same as a high school diploma. So the only benefit for your income, for your life opportunity, is from completion of that credential or degree. So what Conley did in this framework, and what I actually am going to suggest in our plan for next year, we revisit what Rochester did before I arrived around the graduate profile. What Conley did was work to design, based on careful data analysis, a framework for what students need, not just to get into higher education, but to succeed there. Conley's work was initially focused on four-year colleges and universities, but it has absolutely been validated at two-year community and technical colleges. And so it's not the focus of our presentation tonight, so I'll go through this quickly. But I hope as we receive this update, you'll keep this broader framework in mind. So there's 2 slides, one of which is the big picture, and the second of which is a little bit deeper. And so actually, can you go back for one? Thanks. Here you can see what they've done is there's kind of a memorable think, know, act, go that they have actually translated 4 core components of post-secondary readiness into. And those 4 components are what Conley calls key cognitive strategies, the intellectual capacity you need to succeed in rigorous higher work. Then there's key content knowledge, understanding the academic content of reading, mathematics, science, art, history. Then there's key transition knowledge and skills, and that's a lot of what we're going to talk about here tonight. That's really where our post-secondary strategy lives. And then finally, there's knowing how to learn, key learning skills and techniques. And so now, Alex, if you'll go forward one more, you'll see how when you drill down, and I know this looks like a lot, but this is an extraordinary complex set of competencies and skills that fits on one slide. So it's actually not as bad as it looks in terms of the complexity. If you look under cognitive strategies there, you can see problem formulation is first. I will tell you, both here in RPS and other work I've done, this is a gigantic gap for many students. Can I actually formulate the problem that I'm trying to solve? And that has 2 key components. Can I hypothesize? What am I trying to solve? And can I strategize with solutions? Can I research? Can I actually identify what I need to know and collect that information? Can I interpret the information? Can I analyze? And this, I know these things bring to mind a lot someone's with their head in a book, but you need to do this if you're fixing an engine just as much. Can I communicate what I have actually seen in my thinking? And then can I be precise? And can I monitor my learning? And can I make sure that I'm getting it right? So those are the key cognitive strategies, very much the kinds of things we're thinking about in our work on deeper learning, the academic side of our agenda. Then we see the content knowledge. And this is really where the facts matter. The academic knowledge and skills is essential. Sometimes I hear, not just kids, but sometimes adults say, well, in the age of Google, does anybody really need to know anything? You can always Google it. In fact, the research is quite clear. You need foundational knowledge and skills to Google well. And so the structure of knowledge is critical there, where you need to know those key terms. You need to know what is fact and what is not. And you need to be able to link those ideas to what we call epistemology, the way any field, science, math, art, organizes their knowledge. Then you've got those technical knowledge and skills that are unique to every domain, whether it's how you paint with linear perspective or how you do the kind of amazing things that many of us saw our robotics team doing down in Texas in recent weeks. Then you're going to also be taking a look at the ability to get the challenge level right. Do I know when I'm over my head, or do I know when I'm frankly not challenged enough, where I'm coasting? And then there's value, attribution, and then effort. Then we move into those key learning skills, what we sometimes used to call soft skills, which research shows are just as influential for lifetime economic success as the academic skills, which doesn't say the academic skills are not valuable, but these learning skills are just as valuable when we look at life opportunity and income. And Conley's first category is the ownership of learning. Can I set goals? Can I persist? Am I self-aware of my environment, how I'm doing? Am I motivated? Do I know how to seek help? That's another huge gap. We don't work often enough with kids. Every teacher has had a million times where a kid just says, I don't get it, as opposed to saying, I don't understand this thing. Can you help me? That's a skill that we have to teach. Progress monitoring, so students know how they're doing. And then self-efficacy, the sense that I believe that I can do it. And then there's a series of those critical learning techniques that are there. Time management is something that, especially in early high school, we're seeing we have to do more to help kids manage. Your ability to take tests, take notes, memorization and recall, reading for what really matters, learning well with other people, and then being proficient in technology. And then we come to this final category around what Conley called transition knowledge and skills. And that's where it's really critical to understand what post-secondary education is, the different types, to have aspirations for where that student wants to be, and to know what kind of norms and culture will exist there. Knowing how to pay for that post-secondary education, of course, is a critical challenge for many students today. knowing how to matriculate and get in, understanding what you're eligible for, how you gain admissions, what program will help you reach your goals. And we know that in the end, post-secondary education is also not the end of the journey. It's a means to an end, and so then we need to ultimately have kids aware of careers, understanding the requirements to succeed in a career, and their readiness. I will never forget when I was at the University of Minnesota interviewing a student at a technical college on the Iron Range who went into the welding program but was needing to retake high school math. And he was in tears as he described to me, why do I have to retake math? All I want to do is melt. All I want to do is weld. Well, to get a 2-year degree, he had to pass linear algebra. And this was a kid who had no connection between core skills in math and what he was passionate about doing, which was welding. And the system had not prepared him to understand that mastering that core high school mathematics was going to matter for the work that he wanted to do. Then we move into role and identity, having kids see exemplars, and then advocacy for themselves and other issues that they care about. So I wanted to take a moment. We will come back to this larger question of what is our profile of a graduate in RPS in the year ahead. So I share this for illustrative purposes at this time, and I'm excited to turn it over. As you all know, Will Ruffin II leads our Office of Equity and Engagement, and Heather Hogan directs our post-secondary readiness work and school counseling, and Alex Sagano is our lead counselor, a new and urgently needed position. So we're so glad that you're there. And with that very long context, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Kent. Thank you, school board. Like Kent said, my name is Alex Sagano, and I'm the lead school counselor in the district. We're going to start by talking about an initiative that is near and dear to my heart and is really an exciting opportunity for us, is this post-secondary readiness software called Zello that we have. As we'll hear tonight, it's an incredible tool, and we're really thankful to have it. It officially launches in the fall, but we've been getting ready for it as we have been onboarding this year. So part of getting ready for it means preparing the technology for it, making sure Skyward and Zello talk to each other to automate lists, so we don't need students to set up their accounts manually and all that kind of thing to save time. So the technology piece is one part of it, but then the other part of it is getting our staff and our students and our community ready for it. And so, oh, thank you, I just got
That's good.
elevated here. So we've been doing counselor professional development. We've been doing teacher and instructional coach professional development for how to support this work, as well as, like I said, community and parent engagement sessions. In January, we started what we are calling, or what we called our soft launch. So we had 9 schools who raised their hands to be pilot sites. But as the semester and as the months went on since January, there was so much buzz and excitement about it that many other schools have joined in to the soft launch pilot. So we only have 4 school sites right now out of the whole district that have students who haven't logged in yet. So all the other schools have students that are engaged in it already, which is awesome to see. Pardon me. To give you a little bit of an idea of the excitement around this, we have a quote from one of our school counselors, Megan Reyes from Churchill Hoover Elementary, and she says, "Zello has been a great tool to help me expand on my career readiness conversations with elementary age students. Students have become more self-aware and future-focused in a fun, engaging way compared to what I have done in the past. And students are always asking, when are we using Zello next? And just anecdotally, I've been to Churchill Hoover a couple times to observe, and the students are like, when can we do this next? And I don't like Zello, I love Zello, and just really excited in the halls about it. And even just this morning, I had a school counselor at our meeting this morning tell us that she uses Zello in every one of her junior meetings now. And students are really engaged in this work, and our counselors are engaged in it already, which is great to see.
So now that we have students who are engaging with Zello, we wanted to give you all a snapshot of some of the data that our sites and our district is going to have access, and how that might help us moving forward in preparing students for life after high school. There are approximately around 20 different reports that sites are going to have access to. One of them has to do with student engagement. So what you see here is an example of what we can see at the district level, and then sites will be able to see at their level as well. So this just gives us a snapshot of what our student engagement looks like since we started our soft launch in January. When we pulled in April to be ready for this, we've gone back in and looked already, and it has increased in April already. So you're able to see the total logins for the month, the unique student logins, and the one that we are most excited about is that average logins per student. So we know as students are learning and using the tool that their engagement is increasing with Zello. And this was something that we had heard from our representative that we worked with, was that students continue to engage with Zello even outside of their classroom context and are using it on their own. So right now, we can see that our average engagement for our students is increasing as we're going along, and we anticipate that April will show that as well based on what we saw when we just checked in this afternoon. At our high school level, one of the things that we can look at that will help drive programming is top saved clusters. So they are grouping the different career options into the career clusters, and we will be able to see where our students' interests lie. And this, you can drill down even deeper on this, and this does not represent all of the careers that students have explored, but it represents the ones that particular students were interested in enough that they have saved it in their account so that they can then come back to that. And then at our younger grade levels, they're not clustered into those pathways yet, but they're looking more at individual careers, and they're not quite as specific with the elementary ones. And you can see that our elementary students, these are some typical careers that you might expect elementary students to be interested in. One thing that's interesting is when they first started engaging with Zello, a professional athlete was in the top 5, and that has dropped out of the top 5 now. So our students are expanding their interests in the careers that they are exploring. But this is access that at the building level, but then also at the classroom level, teachers are going to be able to look at their classroom and see the interests that their students have, and then they can gear activities and instruction towards what their students are interested in. So some of our takeaways so far in our soft launch, as Alex said, we only have 4 sites who have 0 student logins. So from where we started with sites who were wanting to participate in the soft launch, that has really accelerated, because as part of the soft launch, when it opened up, everyone had access to it. So whoever wanted to engage was able to engage, and we have had a lot more sites jump on and start to explore Zello and see what they have as options in there. Our counselors are reporting a high level of engagement from their students, and we're also seeing that evidence from our logins per student data. As I showed you that very small snapshot, we're going to have access to data that's going to help us drive our programming and individualize those post-secondary pathway work. So sites, when they are able to go in and look at what are our students interested in, then they can do programming through the counseling program to help match that and get students information about that. One thing that we saw as we were looking at this is that our number 2 pathway of interest for high school students is health science careers. And when we take a look at some of our CTEC enrollment in a couple of slides forward, you're going to see health science careers is the #1 pathway where students are enrolling with CTEC, and that also matches our workforce needs in our community, as health science careers is our #1 workforce need. So we have a good match there with what we're seeing, and we want to make sure that we're continuing to support that. Our local scholarship search feature is already being utilized by students. And something that will be coming on board with Zello next year is that students are going to be able to create a scholarship profile within Zello. And then Zello is going to be integrating national scholarships with our local scholarships, and it'll feed scholarships to students based on their profile that they have saved in Zello. And then we are continuing to build our relationships with local businesses, agencies, and nonprofits for our work-based learning module in there. I'll let Alex mention a few things about that because he's been working really hard on that component.
So with the work-based learning feature, it's been really fun partnering with different organizations to build those relationships and make contacts for, and to tell them what this opportunity is where they can post like summer job, potentially part-time jobs, or mentorships, or other forms of work-based learning. Sometimes even just posting something to say, we have an employee at our business who's interested in doing a classroom visit to talk to your students about what we do at our business. So those are the kinds of things that our local agencies, businesses, nonprofits, and others will be able to advertise for our students and our educators to see, to make those connections between local business, work-based learning opportunities, and our students. Another initiative that we have that we've been really excited and working on hard is empowering our counselors to lead the work of post-secondary readiness. I feel really fortunate to support our team of school counselors in the professional development program. And in general, we tend to be pretty collaborative as a group. We like to share our resources. We like to learn from each other. And so as we started our professional development program this year, one of the goals and one of the strategies was to really lean in and to elevate those natural leadership tendencies in order to share strategies and practices that are happening around the district, but as well as to onboard a few new practices from a couple of national organizations. And the first one that I'll talk about is the National Postsecondary Strategy Institute. And we began partnering with this organization at the end of last school year. They are basically a national network of counselors and others who help school districts to develop a post-secondary readiness culture and post-secondary readiness strategies in order to increase outcomes for districts. And they do this through counselor leadership strategy, through data strategies, as well as through engaging counselors in the practice of post-secondary readiness. The other organization that we've been learning from is really intentionally leaning into and centering our work with the American School Counselor Association and their national model of the school counseling program. In order to get a school counseling license in Minnesota, a master's degree is required, and the ASCA national model is a commonly taught thing in school counseling master's programs. So our counselors are obviously familiar with this, but have for a while been advocating for continued professional development and refreshers on how to actually implement the model in our school buildings. So to put really briefly, we could get really lengthy on this, but I'll just put really briefly, the ASCA national model helps school counselors to have, and school counseling programs to have, a culture of continuous improvement in serving students' post-secondary readiness in the areas of academic achievement and habit building, personal and social development, and then career exploration, and all of those things that Dr. Picella talked about on the right side of the chart in terms of awareness of financial aid and all of the other things that help students to achieve post-secondary education. So this year, our counselors are doing a lot of work toward implementing the ASCA national model. We've been doing PD for staff, monthly meetings. We even have a small group working on full implementation of the model who are really engaged in it. So our counselors are really busy learning, really busy organizing around this to take advantage of the national model that we have. The last thing I'll mention about counselor leadership is that in February and March this year, we had about 15 school counselors as well as 4 middle school teachers who support this work come together for 2 days to really solidify plans around our curriculum, our Zello curriculum, our post-secondary readiness curriculum. And so we're really thankful for those leaders and their work to help us align post-secondary instruction and kind of a baseline of what students are going to experience around the district. So again, just briefly, just want to give a quick overview of specific professional development work we've done this year. So as I mentioned, we have a once per month K-12 school counseling professional development learning community. And each month we focus on a different part of the Ask a National model and other strategy recommendations. So at the beginning of the year, we focused on coming up with a vision and a mission in order to really align our work and make sure that our language around this was unified, so that when we're talking with our staff and our stakeholders and others, that we had a common set of vocabulary around what we're doing. We also looked quite extensively at EduClimber and set goals around that in order to support school skip goals and lead conversations in our building with data. Some specific strategies and standards that we worked on this year too were helping students transition between levels, so moving from 5th to 6th grade or 8th grade to 9th grade. So managing that transition, effective coping skills, and then also increasing engagement in extracurricular activities and athletics. We've also been talking about how to advocate for students in how to make our schools and our offices feel more comfortable and feel like spaces where they want to be and feel comfortable, as well as developing a strong academic identity in order to find their spark or the thing that makes them excited to come to school. So for the coming year, we're going to continue to work on the Zello curriculum and activities with the official launch this fall. We're going to continue centering on data, and then as well as engaging with the various post-secondary readiness strategies that the Strategy Institute recommends, which there are a lot of them that we can really grab onto and implement for next year. So we're excited to get to work on that next year.
Yeah, so as you can see, the counselors have been pretty busy from our last update from last school year. So I think we should applaud them on taking on this extra responsibility. It's something that we haven't asked them to do before, and they've leaned into it. They're started to come together as a group. So I just wanted to make sure I say publicly for anyone who's watching or listening, thank you for digging into this work. It was a need. It was a hole that we had in our work here in Rochester. So I'm proud of our counselors who are leading this effort. Now we're going to transition into some of the data. These are some of the graduation rates that came out recently. So each color represents the schools. You can see blues for Century, reds for John Marshall, greenish for Mayo. Then we have the black for Rochester ALC, and then RPS for RPS Online, which has transitioned into MinSync. The first year in the column is the 2022 graduation rate. So for Century, you can see was 90%. And then that second year for 2023 was 88%. Still pretty close for all of our schools. They're in the same range, you know, besides plus or minus a percentage point here and there. The next slide, if you take those same graduation rates and then break them down by group, you can see where our students fall there. So for example, in the first line, the first row, students who are not eligible for free or reduced price lunch meals graduate at a rate of 94%. White students, 91%, multiple race students, 90%. You can go on all the way down the line. I think where we need to focus clearly is our Hispanic and Latino students have a graduation rate of 64%, special education students 66%. Our EL learner students are also at 66%.
And that, I know board members know this well, that's a 4-year on-time rate. It doesn't mean that none of those students graduate beyond that, because we know many of our students take even just the summer beyond the graduation, which doesn't always count. It can, but doesn't always count, and definitely a 5th and even 6th year. But we also know on time is good, because then they can get moving. So those are, I agree with Will, those are critical things for us to focus on, but it doesn't mean that they didn't ever walk across that stage in Rochester to get that diploma.
Could I ask a quick question about that? How are students, for instance, who transfer out of a school their senior year, are they counted in this? So they won't graduate from Rochester, but they might graduate from another city?
you'll count in the school where you spent the largest amount of time. There's a state formula. And so, no, if you spent, for instance, one of the things we found is that some of those students who were at MinSync online that had that big decline had actually only been there for a relatively limited amount of time, and you are assigned to the school based on the number of months that you were in the school most recently. So it is somewhat arbitrary. I mean, in the end, everyone has to get counted somewhere, but we know some of our students are, I think it's Dr. Marvin you're implying, they move into Rochester doing high school, or they move out, or they move across multiple schools. And which school is credited with the graduation or the lack of on-time graduation is sometimes an inexact science. And I would be glad to get, I don't want to misspeak the actual formula that the state uses to assign that, but I'd be glad to send that to the board if that's of interest. Thank you.
The last time we were here, we had a question about CTEC enrollment and what our demographic data looks like. So we included some information in regards to that. And it's important to note that this is for CTE courses that are at CTEC only. We also have CTE courses that fall into most of these pathways at all of our comprehensive high schools as well. As I mentioned earlier, you can see that our largest enrollment is in our health science careers pathway, which is a good connection with our student interest as well. Our second one is manufacturing, which would be our welding course and computer integrated manufacturing. And then our next one is human services. Our next slide with our demographic breakdown, I do apologize. We found an error in this one earlier today, and so we were able to get an update this afternoon before we came. So the numbers on this one are actually, we have 51% of our enrollment is our students who identify as white, 22% are Black African American, 13% are Hispanic Latino, 8% Asian, and then 6% multiple races, and it does mirror fairly close to our, it's representative of our district-wide enrollment in our representation. And then our gender breakdown is slightly off, and so we have a little work to do in that area.
So there is a different slide that we had in the other presentation, but so let's see if I can find the PS. Here it is. So the chart that you see here on the screen is our post-secondary enrollment options participation by school. And as you can see, Century is at 13%, Mayo is at 11.3%, John Marshall at 10.6%, and then MinSync at 6.3%. And again, as you can see, each of our comprehensive high schools has participation higher than the state average. And we're thankful for that because although PSEO is not the only college credit-bearing opportunity, it is a college credit-bearing opportunity and helps our students to see themselves, if they take a PSEO class, see themselves at a college, which ultimately helps their matriculation to some type of post-secondary education after high school. So we're thankful for the comprehensive high school numbers here. We're a little bit out of order here. We're going back to that one. So this bar graph shows our average ACT scores. And as you can see, the RPS average is 21.7, and then the state average is 20.9. And like the bar graph indicates, the Hispanic and Latino average is 17.9, and the Black African American average is 17.6. So whereas the other four demographic groups are above the state and RPS average. So quite a bit of a gap there where we can work on the Hispanic Latino score as well as the Black and African American average composite score. last one.
One of the other things that we are monitoring is our post-secondary enrollment for our graduating classes. And what this shows you is over time, what percentage of those students are enrolling in either a 2-year or a 4-year institution. And what we are seeing is an increase in our number of students who are not enrolling. When you look at the very bottom row where it says immediate fall, so we are currently, for our most recent graduating class that we have the data on 2022, with 58% of our students who are enrolling immediately in that fall after graduation. When you look at that top row, that's looking for the graduating class, students that are not enrolling. And so we're compared with that immediate fall enrollment and then looking at the did not enroll, we can see that we have some work to do there. A question that we had was, is the reason why our enrollment is decreasing because we have more students who are going into the workforce immediately. So when we looked at that information, what we saw is that, for example, with our class of 2022, with 58% who enrolled, we had 28% that were accounted for as being employed. But then we had 14% of our students that are categorized as unknown. So that is an increase from the previous 2 years where the unknown category was 10%. So that is an area that we want to focus on with our students, that they have a plan for after high school, whether that's enrollment or going into the workforce, but we have that they have a plan and we know where they're going to be.
And that we're also, as a field, trying to figure out what the impact of COVID and the pandemic was. As you've seen, if you've seen headlines about colleges cutting programs and shrinking enrollment, matriculation to higher education in general was stalled, but I would really agree that's a very important number for us to be watching.
All right, so as we look to some of our next steps, the work around defining that profile of a graduate, as Dr. Piquel shared with you at the beginning, that Conley framework was a basis for a lot of our work as a DISC team when we started this process. We are looking at our registration process. What we hear from some of our students is that they want a clearer picture of a pathway to what they want to do after high school and how can the registration process support that. So we have been collecting feedback from some student focus groups with our student school board, family and student surveys. We have a team that will be reviewing those results, making recommendations for revisions, and we have a goal of having revisions in place for next year's registration process. We have a district post-secondary readiness team, and sites will have a team or either a new team or an already team that is functioning who will be monitoring their post-secondary readiness data, and some of that will be the Zello implementation at their site. And then also working on that template for student post-secondary plans and tracking that through Zello and which of our students have plans, which ones don't, and then how do we support those students who don't have a plan.
Madam Chair, can I give the answer I didn't have to Dr. Marvin's question?
You can.
Because our research director, Dr. Peter Ruck, is watching at home. And so you count as a high school graduate wherever you most recently were enrolled, unless, and this is the time frame I couldn't remember, that was less than 6 months. And then it counts to the former school. So if you went to the school where you graduated and you were enrolled less than 6 months, then you're counted at the school you were at previously. So it still is somewhat arbitrary, but that's the cut to how it's done.
Thank Dr. Ruck.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Board members, any comments? Director Marvin?
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, the information. The data is really important, and the information about Zello is exciting. And I know that we're at the very genesis of this, but my question is, those 3rd to 5th graders who are determined they want to be actors, and they're into that Zello thing, has there been any discussion about how when they get to be, say, 15 or 16, they get gently nudged to maybe consider a plan B other than acting? Or
I wouldn't say that they get gently nudged, but I think the software is good about tracking where they started and then following them throughout the path, and they can see the differences. I know my son is 8 and he wants to be a YouTuber. I just think it's the life that we live in now. So when I think about the video and the actor, that's what they think of. They see themselves on TV, playing video games and explaining to people how to do that. I just think that's the world we live in. By the time they are 15 and 16, where you are, I'm really hoping, at least for my son, he no longer wants to be a YouTuber, but he has a different aspiration. I think we'll see the same thing for our students as they progress throughout the software.
fingers crossed.
Because
Yeah.
they're able to do some of those assessments multiple times as far as, what it's going to give them for suggestions or recommendations. One of the other things that happens as they're exploring careers, it gives them additional careers to consider that they may not have thought about that are connected to the one that maybe they clicked on initially. So through the platform, there are some gentle suggestions of other careers they could look at. But the hope would be as well that there are adults in the building that are having some of those follow-up conversations with the students as well. And that's part of our planning that we're doing with our counselors and others at the sites.
Thank you, and good luck with that, Mr. Ruffin.
You will get more than a gentle nudge.
At home.
Director Workman?
Well, I do have a question, but I thought that Dr. Marvin was going to ask if we were going to offer more theater classes for our young people. So they can actually, I'm sort of serious, so they can actually experience what is it like to be an actor, aside from just watching someone on television. So I know with the super excess funds we do not have in the budget, that's not possible right now, but maybe someday. So my real question was, do all students take the ACT? I mean, are they, it used to be does the district still pay for the ACT test or not?
State funding.
State
Yes,
funding?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. If they're there,
They take
they
it?
take it.
Okay.
That's the way.
Okay.
yeah.
Thank you.
Director McLaughlin?
I was interested in what you were talking about earlier about the adults in the building being able to see some of these, what the students are looking at and interested in, and then incorporating that into their classroom work. Is that happening yet, or is that something for the fall?
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. There are a number of teachers, especially at the elementary level, who have talked about that and have been excited that they can see what their students' expressed interests are and saved careers. How that looks from a formal standpoint and how to make that kind of a universal practice, we're not kind of there yet. But I think the goal is that that teachers and any other educators who work with students in the building would be able to know a student at that deeper level, and in part to help the student know themselves at that deeper level, to kind of connect with our deeper learning work.
Is that part of the idea of the pilot then, is to gauge that and then incorporate it further in the fall? Awesome.
And that will be part of the site work with their teams as far as the data that they have access to and how do they want to use that at the site. For individual teachers, it's an additional tool for them to get to know their students because they can see what their students, because the students can favorite like interests and they can see that, so they can see what their students are interested in. So they'll have a lot of rich information to give them a little bit more information about who are the people in their classroom that they're working with.
Director Barlow?
Couple of questions. From the initial onset, when he first introduced Zello to us, I've been excited and have been anticipating this day. That being said, I am curious though, as we see groupings of interest, do we have capacity to accommodate? For instance, be it P-Tech, C-Tech, where we may see a heightened increase for health sciences, if you will. There are space limitations. So are you envisioning that day of how we may potentially have to, I don't want to suggest a lottery system, but how can we accommodate the needs of our students who really have a passion, and maybe since their initial introduction to Zello have continued to trend in that direction? I know we're at that initial launch stage, but have you given any thought or consideration to that at this point?
Yeah, we've had some initial conversations for sure. And I think the first point I would want to point out is passing a referendum is very important for this very situation. We have a program like C-Tech that we've just shown is starting to grow, like you mentioned, and we need to make sure like programs like that are there in the future for our students. The other part of the conversation is we started to think about how can we push some of the courses at C-Tech back into our buildings, because that would help us also with some of the issues around transportation and things like that. But if the students are having the classes at their building, it'll be more accessible. And therefore, that might break down a barrier for other students who may want to join in. So yes, we're starting to have those conversations and problem solve, but we are at the beginning phases.
In addition to the Zello information that we have initial student registration information. And what that tells us is that we are already at a point where we don't have the capacity to meet the needs of what our students are telling us that they want. I have twice as many students who initially register for welding as what I have space for. Same thing with our certified nursing assistant. Is our demand from our students outpaces what our capacity is to meet that demand.
And I wouldn't imagine that you're prepared this evening to delve into how students then are selected to fill those slots, but I would be curious at some point in the future to hear how that occurs. And then secondly, I know the ACT scores for 2023. I would be curious how they compare pre-COVID, because I know we oftentimes couch it, well, that's, COVID years and this and that, but I would be curious to see whether these are flat or if indeed there has been something that we can attribute, either the rise or where specifically Hispanic, Latino, Black, African American students continue to lag behind, more so than just wanting to say, yeah, they've always lagged behind. I would be more curious to hear what things then are being done and or what supports are being offered. For me, that probably is more the key area of emphasis, and I'm in no rush to receive the information. I think it would be nice to have it available at some point in the future.
Sure.
I was excited to see that there's an emphasis on improving the high school registration process, because as we know, what they are able to choose to do in high school can rule in or rule out some of the signs that they're getting about what they're interested in. And and I know that it's a big lift because it is a very complex process, but I appreciate you pulling it out, because I know there's a lot of parents out there for whom that high school registration process is as stressful as it is for the students. So I think that'll be a great a great new process and tool. Looking forward to hearing about that. Anybody else?
If I may,
Barlow.
Madam Chair, related to our C-Tech, P-Tech programming, but just course selection in general, and how counselors will now have a tool available. And I'm curious about the gatekeeping aspect or the ongoing monitoring of I mean, you're able to identify the frequency of logins, which is information, but will counselors actually be able to, upon seeing where an interest may lie, how do you envision engaging students to perhaps then point them or advise them as it relates to course selection? Because I'm left of the opinion that oftentimes it may fall to the lucky ones. Counselors are actually able to get ahead of it. Then for those students who may have parents who are very familiar with the process, I was talking to my granddaughter who will be entering high school in January about, whether or not she had registered and what courses she was taking, or had she spoken with her counselor. I'll just leave that out there, but I do believe there's a opportunity, and maybe Zello may be that lens wherein we can see where the opportunities are and where the work can occur.
And just to briefly respond to that, I think I think Zello is a great opportunity for that from a work process standpoint. I think it's sort of a stereotypical way of thinking about it. We sit one-on-one with a student to kind of help them choose their aspirations, and I think that's definitely a good thing to do. From here are the classes that might meet your interest standpoint, that could potentially be more of a group opportunity to say, hey, pulling in groups of students who said that healthcare was more of an interest to them, and then having a teacher potentially there to describe to them what would be done in that class, and if to describe that class to the student to help them decide whether they want to take it. Those kinds of things to make the process a little bit more easy to deliver that information to students is a good opportunity.
Thank you.
Director McLaughlin.
There was early on mention in your presentation about parent engagement, but I didn't hear more about that, about the pilot. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then I guess related question, if parents are interested in learning more about this now, listening to this meeting, how would they do that?
Sure. So the two presentations that we presented to groups of parents were one in February for the parent and family engagement meeting that Jennifer Spindler-Craig runs through her group. And so we talked about Zello through that and did a little bit of work around presenting what Zello is as well as how students will engage in it. The second opportunity was just a couple of weeks ago with the Community Curriculum and Instruction Advisory Council. I'll make sure I get that title right. And so some community members, including parents, gave some feedback, and we're able to hear more kind of from the parent view, like what are parents going to be able to see in this, right? They're going to be able to see a whole student profile. So that was really fun to show them that. If parents want to learn more about this, they can certainly reach out to me. I'm happy to talk with them about it. They can also reach out to their student's school counselor. All of the school counselors are, like I said, getting continuous professional development. So I think that'd probably be the best option, is just have them reach out to their school counselor to learn more about it. We will also be sending out district-wide information to parents to inform them, like as we onboard through the fall. So.
And part of our Zello curriculum writing is developing that communication plan for family engagement. So they began work on that, and then they'll be completing that work with their June date, and then we'll have that ready to go for the rollout in the fall. But the counselors at each level are working with on what that family communication plan is going to look like.
Wonderful, thank you.
Any other comments or questions, board members? Well, I wonder if we completed some of the self-assessments in Zello, what we would actually come up with in terms of
Actor.
But thank you very much.
Thanks, great work. Great work.
Our next agenda item is a monitoring item, the staff development plan. Policy 425 states that the school board will review the staff development plan annually. Superintendent Pickel.
Thank you. I want to ask Heather Clavetter and Heather Willman, our directors of academics at the elementary and secondary level, to come on up and join us. As Chair Nathan just mentioned, board policy requires a regular update on professional development. And in some ways, it's a little puzzling that there's an update just on professional development, because there also could be an update just on curriculum or just on assessment or just on leadership. But I think this is a legacy of an era when professional development just didn't get any respect. It was not something that schools invested in or allocated resources to. My personal example of this is in my second year of teaching, I was appointed the head of the whole staff development committee in a large high school, and that's not because I was such a genius, it's because nobody wanted to do it. Professional development then began to see a sea change as people realized that teaching is a knowledge profession, it's a high-skill profession, and that providing teachers and other educators with the opportunity to continually learn was a critical part of school improvement. And so the state did something like actually say you have to set aside 2% of your funding for professional development because it just wasn't being invested in. And your predecessors on the Rochester School Board said you need to report to us on what you are doing with that key piece of school improvement. I will say that recent research on professional development, though, makes fairly clear that it's necessary but not sufficient. There was a day when people seemed to think if it was just about training the teachers, that in and of itself would translate into improved student achievement. We know it's indispensable, but the quality of the curriculum, the supports that kids need to deal with non-academic issues, all of that has to fit in. And so, like everything, it's not the silver bullet, but it's a critical piece. And so I want to thank Heather and Heather for the work that they're doing in leading this, and we have an update for the board on this key aspect of our work.
So I'll just start by making sure that you know that this is related to district level professional development. There's lots of professional development that happens at our sites as well. And in the past, sometimes there's been a little bit of a disconnect, like we're working on this at the district level and our sites are working on this, but because we have a really tight, focused strategic plan, we see a lot more coherence. But we're gonna be talking with you just about the district level priorities. The other thing I wanted to just point out, and we started with this the last time we reported as well, is just what do we mean when we say effective professional development? Because sometimes you might think of a class that takes place in room 26 or at one time, but we're really thinking about content focused. We're thinking about active learning. We're thinking about sustained duration. So it might not be just one time. It might be, and probably is, more than one time. There's probably collaboration and coaching and expert support. So as you think about the professional development that we'll report on, we wanted to just make sure you were kind of keeping in mind those hallmarks of effective professional development. And then, of course, if we're doing it right, it should connect to our strategic plan. So when you hear us talk tonight, you'll hear about deeper learning. You'll hear about multi-tiered systems of support. You'll hear about mental health, because really professional development should be connected to that strategic plan. And I think we've done a much better job of alignment.
And so the next slide talks about those overall goals that we had for the school year that were definitely connected to the SCIP goals that we have in our district. The first one was about implementing and refining evidence-based structured literacy practices, really all the way through K-12 and even including early childhood. Number two is refining science instruction to align with the new science standards and three-dimensional learning. We also definitely had a big focus on systems of support, MTSS, enhancing student mental health supports, and then implementing evidence-based practices for deeper learning. Those were all the main goals of the staff development offered. So digging in just a little bit to early learning, they were definitely working on structured literacy as well. And they were offered letters for early childhood, which was aligned with the offering from the state. That is a requirement that our teachers are trained in structured literacy. And so you can see the list of very many staff members in early childhood who signed up for the tracks that were offered. We tried to give them several options, and so they could choose from a standard PD day track, an accelerated track, or they had a summer track that they could sign up for. So many of them are in process taking letters for early childhood at this time. And then, of course, digging into elementary literacy. I know you've heard a lot about that this year. We definitely have focused on that all the way through the year. So there was back to school trainings on structured literacy. All of our K through 5 and our new teachers received that as well. Throughout the year, our teachers engaged in evidence-based literacy practices they engaged in the trainings that taught them the evidence-based literacy practices with our Office of Academics literacy coaches. And you can see the list there as well. That included K through 5 classroom teachers, multilingual learning teachers, principals, assistant principals, coaches, and several special education teachers who joined the work as well. And that visual, I know you've seen it very often, but that is really the framework to get our students to skilled reading with the decoding and also the language comprehension. So that was the big focus of the training. Each of those people that were listed attended 4 half days of training during the year. And then included on that elementary literacy, we know the READ Act training that's required for our teachers. We selected the core online Language and Literacy Academy for our elementary and secondary teachers. Again, they were able to select different tracks that fit into their schedules. And you can see there's different phases of training that went on. We had a CLSD grant, and 4 of our schools started sooner than others with that grant. And then we have others that are listed in the phase 1 that are currently engaged in training. Some of them chose the standard track that is within their school hours. We use PD time and also funded subs so that they could have time to work on it. We had others that chose a PD and stipend track, and then we offer a summer track as well for those interested. Fast for Success training was largely done in all of our elementary schools, except for those that already did it last year. They were in a different sustain year of Fast for Success. That really focused on data literacy and systems of tiered supports for our students in literacy as well. So that was a big piece of training that took place at the sites where they attended some live trainings together, and a group of facilitators were trained in each school, and they brought that to their teachers as well. So some of the work in elementary.
Right, and then at secondary level, we have secondary special education teachers and our intervention teachers that are engaged in the launch phase right now of that structured literacy training called CORE. So we chose the same professional development as elementary. And they'll be finished getting trained by the end of September. And then we're also engaging in some disciplinary literacy training. So we worked on that in February. And then in addition, we've been working really hard with our standards in both English and science to think about what does that high quality tier 1 instruction look like. We've also worked on data literacy at the secondary level. So just like elementary, we have Fast for Success, and our teams have worked through the Fast for Success program. And then our high school teams have also looked at some district-led training to think about how can we look at our data a little bit more systematically. And then finally, we had some co-teaching training happening at the secondary level.
Other training that took place for our elementary teachers aligned with science. We have new science standards that we'll be rolling out, and so those were trainings that were offered to our K through 5 teachers during our staff development days this school year. And then we also had a group of 38 science teachers, elementary teachers, who engaged in some pilots to study the offerings out there for curriculum as well. So that was going on throughout the year.
And then secondary, you've heard a lot about science. So we're focusing on that implementation of the 2019 science standards, and again, the 3D learning. Seventh and eighth have worked quite a bit, collaborating and working together on some open SciEd units. We're developing that environmental science curriculum, and that will launch next year. And then they've also been included in that disciplinary literacy training. So we're thinking about argument, we're thinking about developing models, all of those strong literacy practices in science as well. Our summer plans are to do some training with that environmental science team. So we'll be working on a polar ice caps unit, and then the Discovering New Worlds unit, and kind of working through that so that the teachers have a chance to think through what they will teach and kind of model that before they have to jump into the classroom. And then we'll have some collaboration time for grades 6, 7, and 8. And then deeper learning is another piece of professional development that we've been working on all throughout the year. And I know we launched that probably more than a year ago with a study session and some conversation about that. So some things that are happening in an ongoing way, our interdisciplinary deeper learning teams meet every month. So each site has a deeper learning team. And they really have, at the site, chosen a focus of their exploration and implementation. Then we have a district-wide network, and so monthly we get together and we share ideas, talk to one another about what we're learning. And then there have been 2 opportunities for all of the deeper learning folks to get together. One was in August, and then in February again, teams got together and shared. And then we'll have a celebration in April, actually, coming up, where we'll do some more sharing with what we've learned, what's been working. And then some of our teams have actually gone outside of the district to do some learning as well. And so that will be an opportunity in April to do some thinking about that.
And then, of course, aligned with our MTSS work, with Jill Dunn coordinating much of this work, there were several offerings for both leaders and teachers this year. So there was an MTSS kickoff for our leaders in August, where we were really grounded in the SCIP goals and the direction we're going with MTSS. Again, Heather and I have both shared Fast for Success was going on, and that's definitely focused on multi-tiered system of support. And it's listed there again that it's about effectively interpreting and using FastBridge reports, leading effective data team meetings, and connecting FastBridge reports to intervention and instructional plans. There's been a lot of work done in our schools based on that training. There was another session offered, making sense of high school data. So following FastBridge screening at the high school level, high school administrators and instructional leaders receive training about how to interpret that and what are next steps with that data. There were trainings on MTSS teaming processes and structures. That was in February with our school leaders. It was a really great collaboration time for them to come together and talk about those teams in their schools. And then most recently there was an August offering for our principals as well, where they got together and talked about creating the structure for MTSS to be successful. And so they talked about different options for really putting in that intervention time within the schedules as well. Conversations continue that were kind of started in that session. And then mental health is another big area that was a focus this year as well. So led by Connie Grimsrud and then Sarah Clark, our mental health coordinator. They had offerings monthly for our social workers and counselor teams based on evidence-based tier 2 interventions and practices. And you can see kind of the highlights there that they worked on through those sessions. There was also district-wide leadership professional development offered for the school leaders, talking about the role of a leader in mental health. Then there was an offering for the school nurses, an introduction to motivational interviewing so that they were prepared to handle some of the mental health needs that enter the health office as well. On February 19th, there was a PD session that was offered for all teachers. That was about the role of teachers in supporting mental health work. And then there was just ongoing embedded work into counselor and social work team meetings that really focused on supporting the mental health needs of our students. There were also many offerings based on multilingual learning and connected with the Office of Equity and Engagement as well. Natalia Benjamin did a lot of the work offering trainings for our multilingual teachers. So you can see there was a class about translanguaging to deepen the knowledge of translanguaging to support language development and literacy practices, academic outcomes, student identity development, and family engagement. So that was ongoing throughout the school year. There are also co-teaching teams that engaged in training throughout the year. So they focused on co-teaching models, planning and collaboration, English language development level, classroom routines, content and knowledge objectives, authentic assessments, and student choice within those co-teaching trainings. And then there was an offering about Indigenous language and culture, which really centered on Indigenous knowledge, histories, and cultures. And high school teachers were invited to join that curriculum writing and professional development series. And you can see the alignment there to the strategic plan for all of those offerings.
Right, that's a lot. So you might be wondering what's next. So as we think about professional development, one thing that we've been thinking about, and we've talked with you, I think a number of times, about just that regular opportunity for professional development. So we're working on back to school week right now and thinking about what that looks like. Then we'll also have those curriculum adjustment days. And so there'll be 4 of those throughout the year next year. Half of the time will be teacher work time, but then there'll be some time for professional development. And then there'll be a professional development day in February as well. And then we have that structured literacy training that's happening and the curriculum support for elementary literacy. As you know, we'll be embarking with new curriculum, so we'll need some focused time for professional development with that. And then just thinking about the alignment with our site and district professional development. How do we do a good job of making sure that those two pieces are aligned and it doesn't feel like we're working on something at the district that is not necessarily matching what's happening in the classroom or at the site. We'll sustain our Fast for Success data literacy work. We have a really good start, but we know that we need to continue to invest in that to make sure that keeps happening. And then we're really trying to think about strengthening our PLC collaboration. So how do we make sure that teachers get a quality amount of time to work together as a professional learning community? And we'll have some focused planning time at our skip retreat to think about how this all rolls out for next year. And then the last piece is just making sure that we're sharing with you our expenditures so you can kind of see where the dollars followed. And I think just as we talked about at the beginning of this presentation, we want to see that alignment to the strategic plan. And you can see that our dollars and our professional development is really following the priorities that we've set in the strategic plan. So we will open it up for questions for you.
Director Marvin?
You'd mentioned that secondary teachers are getting training in how to use the FastBridge data and to support literacy at the high school level. Is there, in your opinion, and I know this is new still, enough support at the secondary level for those students who don't qualify for special education but who are reading way beneath grade level?
I think there's not enough yet. I think we've started some good efforts. We have some good promising. We have a pilot right now that's happening at Century, where we have a teacher that has a reading license and is working with students in small groups. I was just there yesterday to observe, and we're really seeing great progress when those students get smaller group support, and we're really using the diagnostic data, but we know that we don't necessarily have enough staffing in place to be able to really impact all of the students who need that. We're also trying something at John Marshall, a class-wide intervention, where we're thinking about 5 minutes of reading every day, but with a partner reading structure so that they see the model of a fluent reader, and then they have some opportunity for practice. So I think there are good efforts, but I think there's still more that's needed for secondary.
Thank you.
Dr. Barlow?
2 questions, I think. First of all, I'm glad to see that this aligns with the strategic plan. But in realizing that, I also understand, and the superintendent has communicated this, this is also why it's necessary for the referendum for the community to support these initiatives. Okay. Now, that being said, the science curriculum, I think you referenced 2019, was that? I forget the
standards.
Yeah. So the State Department of Education, they passed the standards. Local districts such as ours then has a length of time to prepare for the implementation. And I know the answer to this, but the public, our viewing public, may not know. Does the state ever provide the financial support for curriculum purchase and or implementation?
Only with the READ Act. I think that's the only time I've seen where there's been reimbursement for curriculum, not
They're
in
offering
science.
partial reimbursement for the literacy curriculum now, but no, not for science.
Yeah, and I thank you for clarifying that. The reason I ask, professional development is occurring in the area of, with the goal in mind of implementing the science curriculum. And so do we reach a point of where it's time to implement and yet we may not have the current curriculum available? I don't know if I'm saying that in the right fashion or not, but.
Yes, I would say that we're at that point now to implement the new standards. So we have work to do. We're thinking through without adopting a new curriculum that aligns with those standards. We're working through how we can support for the next year and maybe add some of the different practices within. But it is difficult to do that without the curriculum resource that would align.
Okay.
If I can just say a little more bluntly, Director Barlow, because it's a critical question. We have had a very rigorous process of selecting a very knowledge-rich new science curriculum, and we don't have funding to implement it. And so we have had to put a pause on the implementation of the curriculum we need to implement the new science standards. And it is a fantastic example of how the shortfall that we face in equipping all Rochester kids with the education we all want them to have, and where else would science be more important than Rochester, Minnesota, and what the consequences are. Now, we will work through that, but the referendum discussion certainly looms large in resourcing the funds we need to continually update the curriculum that our students receive.
And I appreciate that, because it perhaps took me a moment or two to get to that point of realizing, well, why is there this need? And I think we hear why the need exists, and for us to become that district that we know we're fully capable of and that our strategic plan is based on, we need the community support to bring that about. And so thank you for bringing light to that. And I'm excited about the results that will probably occur and how our students will be given the tools to do well. I appreciate also that you included a number of different lenses, if you will, to for us to consider the role that professional development plays. So thank you.
I look at this professional development list and I think about how many of our parents and families and even our community members think of our teachers, and that's in front of a classroom with students. And I hope that by elevating the staff development plan like we do, we're helping everybody to understand the professionalism of our teaching staff in committing to this continuous improvement, not only in their own personal skills, but in the collective commitment to what they told us they wanted us to do in the strategic plan. All of these pieces that we're doing were things that our teachers and our staff told us we needed to improve on. And now they're committing the time, which is outside of a classroom management time, outside of lesson planning time, outside of the hours they're with our students, to do this professional development work. So I appreciate that. I know the board appreciates that, and I hope our community sees that in this plan. It's necessary, in some cases required by law, for example, the READ Act, but it's also a choice that we made as a district of the direction that we're going, and this is the actual steps we're taking to make it happen. So thank you for your leadership in that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next monitoring item is the attendance options redesign implementation. Superintendent Pickell.
I think I'd like to ask John Carlson, our Chief Administrative Officer, and Jackie Peterson, our Chief of Schools, to come on down. As board members are well aware, we, you this winter approved a redesign of some aspects of our school district's processes for who can go to school where and how they get there. And we came to call that the attendance options redesign. As the board and certainly the community know, there was version 1, which was very different than version 2 and where we ended up. And so the community feedback that we received and ultimately the decision that board members made, I think, left us in a better place, but it is still very much a work in progress. And so we wanted to give the board and others who are interested an update on a work in progress. We debut next fall, but as you can imagine, literally the day after you voted, the wheels began moving toward implementation. So I want to thank John and Jackie for this update, and we will certainly come back to the board and the community with other updates as this very fluid process continues to play out.
Well, good, thank you. We're going to just tag team and we're going to take various slides as we go through this. So Jackie's going to start and talk about the transition from Pinewood to Longfellow.
You'll see a few slides, the move from Pinewood to Longfellow, or the co-location of the programs, and then of Spanish immersion at Gage to Riverside, and there's some similar things going on at both sites, all in an effort to welcome families and welcome staff into a shared building situation. So there's some commonalities. There's a lot of detail in the board document, and here on the slide, just a couple things that we'll touch on, but things that people probably aren't thinking we need to be doing behind the scenes, but early on, both buildings started looking at classroom assignments and whether we have Longfellow on one side of the building and Pinewood on the other. They very quickly decided they wanted to co-locate. So our 5th grade, for example, at Pinewood and Longfellow will all be in the same pod, which I think is a really nice way to do some collaboration. Something unique to Pinewood and Longfellow is the different schedules. So right now they're currently working through when Longfellow is in intersession, and they're typically working with SAC and Boys and Girls Club. They're used to having an empty building to roam. They won't have that anymore, so they're working on how they'll utilize space with a building that's still occupied and in session. So we're working through some of those details. Amy Adams and Heidi Howe have done an amazing job working together to create a feeling of excitement over coming together. The staff at Pinewood and the staffs at Pinewood and Longfellow had joint meetings together. They've done some just socializing together at the building, looking through the building, giving families tours. They are doing a lot of planning around PBIS and how they'll join forces there together at Longfellow. They've had some joint staff meetings and look forward to more of those. Their PTAs are working together to talk about how they can pool their resources, things like the shed out back. Can they both be utilizing those things? I hope they'll look at maybe doing some shared events as the next school year begins. And even looking at how the 2 front offices will work together with 2 office managers managing 2 different programs. The 2 office managers have gotten together to talk about how they'll welcome families. So lots of work between Pinewood and Longfellow together to get ready for the transition. I think the furniture piece is getting things moved over from Pinewood, but not taking too much because we have a beautifully outfitted brand new furniture and we don't want to bring too much furniture over. We can go to the next slide. That brings us to Spanish immersion coming over to Riverside. They're going to need some of that furniture from Pinewood, so I've been talking with John about making sure Riverside gets to look through what's there for their building, because they'll have additional classrooms before we do kind of the open house to give away furniture that is currently at Pinewood that won't be used the following year. They've also been looking at classroom space and how they'll merge classrooms into the current building, Spanish immersion, and the neighborhood school. They too are looking at, for the most part, keeping grade levels together so there can be that collaboration. They've worked with Natalia Benjamin to identify Spanish heritage speakers that are in the Riverside neighborhood to invite them to consider taking advantage of Spanish immersion coursework or classrooms. They've done tours. I will say that Chris Davidson, Aaron Raymond, and Natalia Benjamin have met weekly as soon as you voted on the attendance option redesign, to start planning and helping our families understand the transition and prepare for the transition to Riverside. They are doing tours, and they're planning a family engagement event between both buildings in May to bring both communities together, and also have had some staff gatherings to welcome the Spanish immersion folks over to Riverside. We do, on the horizon, then plan to look at space for the 6th through 8th grade. We want to see how Riverside enrollment shakes out in terms of the neighborhood and how many students continue to remain enrolled in Spanish immersion K-5. John will have some enrollment data coming up that'll help us understand how we are doing at moving our DWO kids over.
Great. And so I want to talk about attendance area changes. One thing we did, I got this notification myself as a parent of 2 students. We sent out a blast to all parents to say, this is where we think your student's going next year based on our records that we have right now. And please let us know if that doesn't match what you think is going to happen. And we got a handful of notifications back from parents who either were seeking clarity or were telling us that, hey, this doesn't look exactly right to me. And so we helped them fix that. And so I think that actually helped us prevent some misunderstandings coming up on August 28th. We've updated records accordingly. We've also been working on the transportation. Similarly, we will begin routing our students here very soon. First Student has worked to retime all the bus stops. They kind of took a shell of what they have already and then retime them to make sure they fit with the new start times. And now in the next couple weeks, we're going to load the actual students into those new routes and just confirm that everything will work the way we want it to, and confirm the number of routes that maybe we can do without next year as we make these changes. Again, we have been made aware of some of our families who are in the traditional district-wide option schools that have indicated they can no longer provide transportation on their own, and so those handful of students have been placed at an attendance area school near to where they live. We do expect, Jackie is expecting that some families will continue to notify us even right up until school starts that, hey, maybe I thought I could stay in one of these schools, but maybe I can't now. And so we will be able to accommodate them as we learn of them. One of the big things we did right after the vote was we launched our new software called Schoolmint. Schoolmint is taking all of the applications now. We used to call it the lottery, and we also had the exception to attendance, which was a paper form that you went through Jackie's Office of School Support. It's all combined now into the self-transport application. We so far have received, and this is a dynamic number, it changes every day because there are still families and students applying for options. But when I made this slide, we had 650 students who had applied for 965 different seats. So that means on average, each student was submitting 1.2, 1.3 applications. So some were just intent on applying for one school, one choice, and then some were putting in applications for 2 or 3 different options and seeing which one they got pulled for. I have really enjoyed seeing the software work and how it manages the lottery. It's been very automated. It's been sending texts, sending emails. Parents are going in. We can see timestamp to the second when they're accepting or declining their offers. And we've gotten that list down. Remember, I said it started at 650 students. As of a few moments ago, there's only 64 students now waiting for a spot. Yesterday, there were 66 students. So we only have wait lists at Falwell in the 3rd grade. We're actually over our numbers already just by the neighborhood of Falwell, so we can't let in any 3rd graders. There's 2 that would like to attend Falwell in the 3rd grade. We are nearly full at Lincoln, but we do have 2 openings in 7th grade, so we are 2 short of being full at 7th grade at Lincoln. Washington, we are full in 1st, 4th, 5th, and 3rd, but we have openings in kindergarten and 2 in 2nd grade. So we have 9 in kindergarten, 2 in 2nd grade there. Yesterday, we were asked to provide a little more context as to where do we sit right now with our enrollment for next year compared to the capacity of each building. I just want to reflect, it's down there at the very bottom, or just verbally say that we expect our enrollment to always be around 3 to 6% below what it's actually going to be when we get to the fall. And that's simply because there are kindergartners that are still coming to our kindergarten information sessions. They still need to make a decision if they're attending Rochester Public Schools. We hope that they are, but they need to come in and actually do their enrollment, and that happens all through the summer. If you visit this building in August, it's a flurry of activity as people are realizing, hey, I guess I forgot to put my kid in kindergarten, so I'm going to get down to the Edison building and take care of that. We do have online enrollment for that. If anyone's listening and watching, that has become very popular too lately, so it is decreasing some of the in-person visits. But that is an option for people to apply online. So I'm not going to read all these to you. They're in the assembly for you, just highlighting that Gage is at 43% capacity. That's because the Spanish immersion is moving over to Riverside. And then a building you see there, like I just mentioned, Falwell is pretty much right up to capacity right now. In fact, it's a little stressed, like I said, in 3rd grade. And the principal there needs to make a decision at some point if they're going to give up an art room or a music room if any more 3rd graders move into that neighborhood, because we're kind of out of rooms and space for 3rd grade. Must be a bubble class coming through. Continues on with the elementary school capacities. Overall, we're at 73% capacity. Again, I'm expecting another 300 to 400 kindergartners to register, and so we're going to end up, my gut is telling me, about 76 to 79% to capacity once we get to the fall. At our middle schools, we're very, I would say, balanced. 78% is the average capacity, and they're pretty even as you look at the numbers there. And then at the high school level, we are at 93% capacity, with Mayo now just touching over what is their capacity. But we know with P-TECH, C-TECH, PSEO options, open hours, we're never at a point where there's 1,816 kids in the building at the exact same time. That just doesn't happen on a day-to-day basis. So, but on paper, we're approaching the capacity at Mayo High School.
We did expand the Montessori program as was called for in the attendance option redesign. We worked with Principal Sam Pearson to identify how we might do that most efficiently. We added capacity at kindergarten so that we can grow the program on up through E1 and E2. So you can see we have exhausted our waiting list, and we look forward to maybe having more kids enroll, but we've increased that program by 25 students. Which is about a class size. We've expanded the newcomer program as was called for in the attendance option redesign. So we're actually
program. Part of the commitment there was to expand the number of spots, and through encouraging hiring of more of our RPS students. So Nate gave me these numbers the other day. I was very encouraged to see that he's been able to hire 32 sophomores and juniors, with 23 in queue or in process of going through hiring right now. We have 11 seniors that have hired, with 8 in process of being hired. We've hired 7 non-RPS students, and that's important because they actually help fill gaps when the RPS students are still getting out of class and getting it over to the buildings where they work at. He told me that we have over 300 spots that have been added for summer 2024 SAC programming, so I'm sure that's welcome news to many parents in the community. And then registration for next school year's SAC starts on May 15th at 6 a.m. And the goal, of course, is to increase spots by 25%. It's totally contingent upon the number of staff that we're able to hire and keep the ratios in check.
And finally, the expansion or the creation of middle school ALC. You heard an update not too long ago from Travis Bain and the staff at what's currently known as Middle School Right Fit. We're on target to transition over to the middle school ALC. This coming year, we'll have the same capacity with the plan to grow to up to 90 students and a self-sustaining budget. And Travis and company are very busy talking with elementary principals about what kind of a student might be a good fit for middle school ALC, and likewise talking with middle school principals about openings in 7th and 8th grade. So we're working on getting our enrollment up to capacity. Can I say one more thing about that too? One exciting new change is that the school formerly known as RPS Online, MinSync, has dedicated a staff member so that, because they'll be co-located at the Friedel building next year. We're out of space at Longfellow for that program. They lost their lease, as they say. And so when they move over there, they will have a classroom so that kids who want to be in MinSync but need some supervision, or parents aren't real crazy about having them at home alone, or just want that social interaction, can attend MinSync online, but in a classroom at Friedel with staff helping keep kids focused. So that's a new and exciting change.
Yeah. Board members? Dr. Workman.
I have a question about SAC. Could you describe the registration process for that? And do current families have first choice, or is it a lottery?
I'm gonna phone a friend and have Amy.
Phone friend.
Sorry about that. We open at a certain time for online registration, and all are equal at that point, with the exception of students that we have to get placed in a summer of discovery site. And so we've sort of manually entered them at that point for summer registration. We heard great things about the 6 a.m. online, even though you might be surprised about that, but parents didn't have to take time out of work to worry if they were going to get in. And then by splitting summer and school year, they also just had to get one thing done in that moment. So we still have space at one site of the 3.
I have a couple follow-up questions. So are the registrations available in different languages online?
No, not through our registration system.
Okay. And then for students or parents who don't have the ability to register online, is there any other kind of option?
Yes, they can work through our office. Okay. Absolutely.
Thank you. Because I know we're going to get questions on that.
Sure.
Thanks.
So I have a question about the places that still have openings. So let's say there's someone watching this tonight and says, oh, there's an opening at this school. Can they still take action, and how would they do so?
You can absolutely apply on our website. We say School Mint, but on our website, it's just a link that says apply to a district-wide option. And we are still accepting enrollments or requests for district-wide options and self-transports. We'll continue to do that rolling through the school year, and we'll continue to fill seats as they're automatically, right? We don't really, it's not as people-intensive process. It happens automatically. For example, we have a Pinewood student, a 4th grader, who's thinking they might want to go to the Longfellow calendar. They can now go onto School Mint, essentially apply, and our system will pick that up and offer the seat if it's available.
And does the School Mint also tell them in real time where the openings are?
No, it does not. That is a feature that I am interested in providing or having some sort of visual available for our community so they can kind of gauge where they would likely land or get a yes right away.
But these are accurate as of this evening then, okay. And then you mentioned the routes being redrawn for transportation. We've already been getting some questions from parents. When will they know their pickup time, their drop-off time, their bus stop location, and their route?
Yep, so we were just talking about that this morning, and we're following a typical timeline, although we might try to get them out in a week or two earlier, but it's going to be right around the beginning of August. Our Longfellow kids, we get them before then, but our regular calendar, we get them in early August. And new this year, we are going to add the estimated drop time in the afternoon. We haven't put that on before because if you're off 5 or 10 minutes, we're going to say it's a range, or we're going to say it could be plus or minus 10 minutes from the time we stayed this year.
And is there or where in this process would someone attending a district-wide option school but wanting to use one of the regional drop-off sites, is that something they sign up for? How do they tell you they're going to do that?
I would say they would be best served calling our transportation department and making sure that we know of that request, that would be their routing preference. We are going to be asking our 10th through 12th grader families to confirm. We call it registered rider, to make sure that we're not routing all of our 10th and 12th graders, because we realize a significant number of them drive anyway. But our other students, that's a good one-on-one conversation. They can call into the office and just make sure we confirm their pickup location with them.
Dr. Marvin.
Just a really quick comment. I've been so impressed with the way building administrators are working together with each other, and there's so much of this change is just wonderful, and people are excited and they're doing it well, and they're thinking about kids and families. And I'm particularly enthused about the middle school ALC. We heard from a couple of high school ALC students today who said literally it was life-changing for them. And I think to have this opportunity for some of our middle schoolers who need this to really thrive, it's about time, and I couldn't be more pleased.
Dr. McLaughlin.
I have a follow-up to Chair Nathan's question about the transportation, and if you'd mentioned the 10th through 12th, you're going to survey to see what their plans are. If families are listening who just traditionally drop their kids rather than taking the bus, do you want them to reach out to transportation as well to let them know?
It's always helpful, yes. If you don't need a ride, but you're routed, and you're just going to be a driver or a drop-off family, to let us know that, because then we can take them off, and perhaps that opens up a seat on the bus for someone else that could use it.
Thank you.
Do families get told that's your preference? If they're just
We're trying to
listening
improve trying to think through how we're going to have communication. We really would like that ongoing dialogue. I think sometimes people don't think of that to notify us, but we really appreciate that communication.
Correct, because at the Pomoja Women event, there was a lot of confusion and question about where is their, route going to be, and if they were in one group and now they're not, are they able to do this instead of that? And so they were just like, we don't know where to get that information, or where the school would want us to put that information if we could. And so I think the tendency is to just they all tell one person, and hopefully that person is going to come and share on behalf of several
That's
families
good.
what that information is, but it may be different for each person.
That's right. And again, our customer service office in the transportation department is great in having those one-on-one conversations. But you're right, we're trying to figure out how's the best way to get people to respond and to tell us what their plans are, because we do struggle with getting that information from people. And then it always pains me when you see a bus pull away from a school in the afternoon that should have 77 students, because there's 77 seats on it. We're trying to be as efficient and as least costly as possible, but you see 10 heads in the bus, and that's largely a factor of people saying, I'll take a ride, but then they drive or drop off or whatever. So.
And I also add at the district-wide option schools, add it to the list of wonderful things our administrators are doing, but most of them have talked to every family to talk through their situation when they were making decision about whether they could stay or not. So a lot of our families, most of our families have had a personal touch there with an administrator talking through what the options were in terms of the hub and doing some problem solving with families.
House board members? Thank you.
Thank you.
It's a lot of work. All right, board members, it's after 7:30. Do we need a break before we move into our action items? I'm not hearing any, so we'll go on. Item 8.1 is an action item, our elementary literacy curriculum. I'll read the resolution and ask for motion and second, and if received, we'll open the floor for information and discussion. Be it resolved, the School Board of Independent School District 535 does hereby approve the purchase of the Wit and Wisdom Knowledge Building Literacy Curriculum from Great Minds for grades kindergarten through 5 in the total amount of $1,114,962.68 in a multi-year order for the 2024-25, 2025-26, and 2026-27 school years. And be it further resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 535 does hereby approve the purchase of the Functional Phonics and Morphology Foundational Literacy Curriculum from the University of Minnesota for grades 3 through 5 in the total amount of $92,350 in a multi-year order for the 2024-25, 2025-26, and 2026-27 school years.
So moved.
Second. There has been a motion and a second. Any questions or discussion, board members? Well, I think it has to be said before we take the vote. What a monumental moment this is. I mean, it looks like it's an action item and we're voting to spend some money. But if you watched the study session last week, you saw the intensive process that involved our experts in literacy, which are our teachers, who looked at the curriculum that was offered to us through the redact process and the evaluation process that was done by the University of Minnesota. And they really looked at all of the needs of our students that we've been talking about for years that needed to be filled through the curriculum. And to hear the excitement of the teachers who worked through this process about what this curriculum could do. You just heard about the staff development that's going to support the implementation of the curriculum. This is a tool that is going to be the books in our classroom and the resources online that our students are going to experience for the majority of their foundational years in literacy. So I don't want to let this moment go by with just a vote without recognizing this is a launch. This is a rocket about to launch. And it is fueled by a lot of really good work. And I'm very excited to see where it goes. Director Cook, do you have anything to say?
Well, no, I appreciate that, Chair Nathan. I am looking forward to approving this selection of curriculum and this expenditure for the funds to support it for the next 3 years with great enthusiasm. But maybe just to echo some of my colleagues this evening, this is yet another example of the urgent need to properly resource our district in selecting and purchasing curriculum on an ongoing basis that is simply going to require more funds than the state makes available. But I am absolutely looking forward to approving this, and I'm grateful for the work that's gone into bringing us to this point, and just can't wait to see it implemented.
Board members, anything else? Hearing none. Oh, Director Barlow.
And thank you, Director Cook. Superintendent Piquel, if you wouldn't mind speaking just briefly, how were we able to actually, at this time, fund the purchase of this curriculum?
Yeah, thank you, Director Barlow. We have been conservative in the allocation of our federal COVID funding throughout the period of the pandemic, and we are at the moment of expending the last of those dollars, and we have sequestered slightly less than $1 million of them to fund the core of this purchase. We also received literacy incentive aid from the state. We're allocating that, and then we do expect a level of reimbursement because we are purchasing a curriculum off the approved list, which board members know we were eagerly awaiting for. And so there will be, I think we're estimating potentially around 30% reimbursement for that forthcoming. So it, I think, reinforces the point Director Cook was making and that you were making. If we did not have those special sources of funding for this critical curriculum purchase, we would not have the resources. And so we're fortunate that we have sequestered these dollars for this purpose, but we need to adequately resource this in every subject area going forward.
Thank you.
Hearing no more comments, or Director Mc?
I just want to comment on that I'm so appreciative of the planning that's gone into that over the years, that we knew that this was coming and that we planned for it. And I'm hoping that then we have the resources to continue with that thoughtful, fiscally responsible planning moving forward.
If I may, there's a lot of math teachers out there saying, we're next, and science teachers and art teachers, and so, yes.
And social studies.
And social studies, so, absolutely agreed. We need this in an ongoing basis.
All right, last call. Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Paula,
Aye.
Dr. Cook,
With great enthusiasm. Aye.
Director Garcia,
Equal enthusiasm, aye.
Director McLaughlin,
Aye.
Director Marvin,
Aye.
Chair Nathan,
Aye.
Vice Chair Workman.
Aye. That was my enthusiasm.
That's good.
And with a unanimous vote, the resolution is passed.
Chair Nathan, I would like you to say functional phonics and morphology foundational literacy curriculum fast 3 times.
I think I'll need some professional development for that. Item 8.2 is school resource officer update and consideration of contract renewal. The board reviewed data on the school resource officers in our schools and discussed considerations related to contract renewal at the April 9th meeting. A reminder for the board member and the community that as the contract states, the current agreement will automatically renew for a period of 12 calendar months, July 1st to June 30th, unless either party provides written notice of termination to the other party on or before May 1st, 2024. So although this is an action item, we have to choose the direction of our action item. And our first option is to take no action, and the current contract will renew for a period of 12 months, or there would have to be a resolution suggested, moved, and approved to provide written notice of termination of the contract. Any questions or discussion on the topic or the options? Director Garcia?
I guess I have a question that I think number one assumes that the other party will notify us if they have some sort of change. That we obviously can't speak for them.
My recent discussions with Chief Franklin on a number of subjects would indicate no plans for any change on the part of our people.
That's good to hear. Thank you.
Director Garcia.
So as we get ready to decide what to do, I just wanted to be able to speak to a couple of things about like our process and where we're going with this. I think the handling of the SRO contract has been so varied over the years that I've been here. And so in the beginning, it felt like a less than transparent mess, thinking of just the MOU debacle. And now it feels like we've moved toward a more transparent process. Yet the thing that I worry about is that we're likely to fall back into complacency where we just sort of passively consider the contract and let it fall through, rather than looking at it as critically as we have in the last couple of years. And so despite my pessimism and stubbornness on all of this, I do want to appreciate how far we've come in this. And I acknowledge that there are a lot of attempts to collect data and the work done to change the contract. I worked with a couple of my colleagues on that. I appreciate the research that was presented to us, especially when we listened to a number of experts basically tell us that there's no great answer or a clear answer that exists as an alternative to SROs. But I just want to be clear to everybody else that it isn't because the SROs are better than an alternative, it's because there hasn't been enough alternatives created and implemented to allow for meaningful collection of comparison data. So we could still be a pioneer in reimagining a new way of school safety. And I want to express my appreciation specifically for Captain Stillwell throughout this process. I appreciate that he's able to acknowledge and actually say out loud things his superiors and colleagues have not. And I additionally recognize that having to defend your existence in our schools to 7 board members who are not directly affected by the SROs is also unnerving. So thank you for working with us to try to figure out what that looks like for our district and to be willing to be withstand some of our pushback. And to be clear, I do hear great things about our SROs, and my concern has never been with any person as an individual. It's about our district saying that it's attempting to be anti-racist, and yet we choose over and over again to invite one of the most historically racist systems into our schools. So I would say that reimagining what school safety would look like without SROs is not something anyone on the board has ever really been truly interested in exploring. That's been clear to me this entire time. Essentially, we've just been hoping that we can mold the SROs into a version of themselves that we like, and we're missing the opportunity to get this right. And to be a system that breaks down barriers and oppressive practices. So since the racist word appeared on our bridge, I have heard numerous constituents, or from numerous constituents, both voting and non-voting, and mostly non-voting because they're too young to vote, telling me about their concerns, their fears, and their disappointment about how law enforcement and some of our community leaders either avoided answers of substance or seemed to make excuses at some of the recent talks. And when I asked if I could share their names or connect them with someone in the district so that their voice could be heard and their experience could be acknowledged, they asked me not to, because they say it's not worth it anymore, or they don't listen to us, so why bother? Or worse still, I don't feel safe being in one of our schools because of the color of my skin. Why would I want to put another target on my back? So I ask you, Dr. Bickel, that when you say that you have not received any negative feedback about the SROs, to think about why that might be, not just because perhaps they are doing a good job, but because the people who are most directly affected by this are just done trying to make their voice heard on this particular issue. So I will just end this by saying we still have work to do, and I would not recommend patting ourselves on the back just yet. But thank you for all the work that has been done thus far. And I appreciate your leadership in attempting us to move to a place that the board has been asking for us to go.
Thank you, Director Garcia.
Any other questions or comments, Director Barlow? I'm sorry.
Well, if you insist.
She looked at you, I didn't.
I agree with much of what Dr. Garcia has shared. I do appreciate the convening that occurred yesterday evening at Willow Creek, where we had opportunity to hear directly from our students and their experiences within Rochester Public Schools. And they had the opportunity to communicate, and many of them did, their frustrations and or other direct experiences within our hallways. None of them, however, had mentioned anything in regards to impacts positively or negatively associated with the SROs. And that may have been just a result of comfort level or discomfort in a public setting. But I appreciate the fact that you've developed a relationship to where students are willing to communicate to you, and I think that's important, because even though they're not yet old enough to vote, they are yet still old enough to convey their true thoughts, feelings, and emotions. So thank you for capturing that and presenting that.
I want to thank you, Dr. Garcia, too, and just to add a little specificity to my statement in the earlier briefing, I have heard concerns from students about SROs in schools. My statement was, I haven't received from students, parents, or staff a complaint about the actions of a specific SRO in our building, which for me would be very, very serious, and which we would, so, this SRO did this to my students. So, but I have heard some of the concerns, maybe not as recently or as directly, and I regret that some of those students or adults that you talked to didn't feel they could continue to express those concerns, but I do want to say I have heard the concerns about the presence of police in our schools, and am sensitive to that. We also getting concerns about the attitudes, words, and behaviors of the specific officers in our schools. That would certainly be a subject of both reporting to you as the board, and I'm sure action with the Rochester Police Department. So similar but a little bit different, just to clarify the point that you made.
And I think that, to Director Garcia's point of going forward, let's not fall back into past practices. The one thing I appreciate about this board is the collaborative work we do on setting our agenda for the year. And the board has made it very clear that they don't want it to be a surprise meeting in late April to talk about the school resource officer contract, and the superintendent and the cabinet have been very committed to making sure throughout the year that the data is being tracked, so that when we do get to the agenda items that we have, they're not surprised, we're not surprised, and we hear what we've heard in past years, oh, we don't have that data. So personally, I can commit, as long as I'm chair, to ensuring that we are following that plan of evaluate, look at data, react, have a conversation, as we move to talking about this contract. Now, we have options in the future to how we discuss the contract. We could modify the contract with enough notice to say we have to take an affirmative, pass an affirmative resolution to approve the contract, not just let it sit without an action. But if that's something we want to do, then we need to work it into our schedule, because it is a two-party contract and there's processes that it has to move through with the city as well. So that's something we could consider. So it doesn't feel so, oh, we just let it sit, versus taking a non-renewal action. That's something else to consider. So given that I hear no alternative resolution, and taking no action renews the contract for a period of 12 months, unless there's any additional comments or questions, we can move on. All right. Our next agenda item is 8.2, an action item, the school board response to APAC. This is also an action item that I will read the resolution and ask for a motion and second, and then we can have discussion. Be it resolved that the School Board of Independent School District 535 does hereby approve the response letter to the American Indian Parent Advisory Committee, APAC, regarding the letter of non-concurrency received by the district on March 19th, 2024.
Move approval.
Second.
It has been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? All right, hearing none, roll call vote.
Director Barlow.
Aye.
Director Cook.
Aye.
Director Garcia.
Aye.
Director McLaughlin.
Aye.
Director Marvin.
Aye.
Chair Nathan.
Aye.
Vice Chair Workman.
Aye.
The resolution passes. Item 9.1 is the current version of the ABCD. Are there any other agenda items board members would like to raise for consideration for a future agenda item? Hearing none, I don't believe there were any questions submitted by board members prior to the meeting. We have upcoming board meeting dates of May 7th, which is a regular meeting, May 14th, a study session, May 21st, a regular meeting, and June 4th, a regular meeting. And hearing no other business, this meeting is adjourned at 7:59 p.m.